Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, your source for emotionally exhausted commentary. Hit the like button, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live on Twitch for a chat, and let's kick it off with Warcraft's most unique offering by far, WoW Classic Hardcore, which opened this week. For those who don't know, it's WoW Classic with a twist. You die, game over. There's no cheesing allowed with the likes of Bubble Hearthing or using a Soul Stone or Ivanka of Reincarnation, you're just dead. I played it so you don't have to, and short story short, I got to level 8 and was laid low by a bear and a cat. I got the bear, I got killed by the cat every time. It's a freaking cat. As promised, that's it for my hardcore experience, but you know what? I had fun, and I'm thinking of a tasteful way to try and reintroduce myself back into it. That aside, the launch went as one would expect. It was full, with plenty of bodies to fill up the 2 servers here on the North American side, and many more queued up waiting to get in, and I expect this to last while it's nice and shiny and new, but it's not going to be long until the traffic settles down, and those who are left are the survivors and the masochists, the true hardcore enthusiasts. I think that even as spectators, we should keep our attention on hardcore for the sake of the wild stories that can come out of it. I'm waiting for like a disastrous mob train to wipe people out over down in Stranglethorn Vale, or for 2 bros to meet outside of Orgrimmar to settle an argument. Like, dude, I want to see someone like, oh, is that right? You think Yarel is hotter than Jaina? Meet me outside Org, buddy. It's time for a Makara. If you bots, expect to eventually get banned. That's what allegedly happened to thousands of players who use what are called rotation bots, which automate your character's class rotation to optimal levels, and then all you have to do is like move your character around and stay out of fire. Bots come in all sorts of sizes and flavors. It's kind of like ordering different stuff from a restaurant. You got your full service leveling bots, your dedicated dungeon farming bot, the outdoor gathering bot, the kill everything while gathering, well, that's actually 2 bots. Every week or so, the WoW team fills us in on just how many accounts they ban, including those who use bots, and that number's up to like over 100,000 that are taken down on a pretty regular basis, only of course for new ones to pop up. And there's a bit of grumbling from a small number of players who insist that at the top end of Big 3 content, tools like these are necessary to play at a competitive level, and also alleging that some of these prominent top players were part of this ban wave. Some of those took this as a go-ahead and posted a few bait posts on the app formerly known as Twitter, and the replies have been amazing. On a pretty closely related note, there's been a lot of dust up in the past few weeks with the appearance, or I guess the threat, of overlays in the world of Warcraft. Short story, it goes back to the WoW team trying to hide raid mechanics from add-ons like deadly boss mods and weak auras, so players are playing the game more than the add-on. That meant that some mechanics and strategies needed to be managed the old school way, namely just you trying to remember stuff and a raid leader to call out when things happen because hopefully they remember the stuff. Adding to this are augmentation evokers, whose performance isn't just measured by what they do, but what they do for others. As it is right now, add-ons like Details aren't able to fully break down all evoker performance real time, and here's why. There are 2 kinds of combat logs. There's regular and there's advanced. The regular combat log can be tracked in-game real time. That's how we get add-ons like Recount and Details. Advanced combat logs, though, are not tracked real time, not inside the game at least, but they do record all information like where characters are standing and moving, and also all the combat elements, including what augmentation evokers are doing for their team. The person who runs Warcraft logs, which is a very popular site for tracking performance, they have a live logging option that lets users see results without having to go through an upload process. They announced the other week that they're developing their own damage meter overlay that relies on the advanced logging feature, which lets it bypass whatever Blizzard tries to hide in game. But this opens up a pretty slippery slope that many players pointed out and even made examples of. One could use external tracking to make real-time maps to help or even trivialize encounter mechanics. Naturally, the WoW team responded to the pressure and reassured players that by the time 10.2 releases, there are going to be adjustments to prevent these real-time overlays from being a thing. Okay, maybe that wasn't such a short story, but that's where we're at for now, and this makes for some very interesting conversation on the topic of combat-based add-ons and our so-called dependence on them. I'd like to know what you think. Like, I think that there's a clear difference between a rotation add-on that tells you what button to press and a third-party app that you pay for monthly that does the rotation while you AFK. The way I see it, add-ons are just tweaks that make the game easier for your specific needs, you know, kind of like a difficulty slider. If a team manages to complete a raid with no add-ons whatsoever and just relied on super tier coordination and memorizing, hey, all the more power to them. I think it would be amazing if there was a way for the game to have an achievement that can detect whether people are using add-ons and give a special achievement for completing a mythic raid when no add-ons are being run. Except for, of course, the shot caller who does have all the timers actually and can help coordinate, but hey, let's move on. Are Paladins the next race class combo? There's a bit of that sort of speculation going, and it's got some people a little bit tilted. This week, a release candidate build of 10.17 dropped, and we'll get to the datamine stuff on pre-orders in a bit, but first I want to talk about this Paladin stuff. Minor spoiler alerts, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but there was a quest that involved a Paladin named Travald, who was guarding Tyr's tomb over in Tirisfal Glades. By the end of the quest, he decides to set himself up in Tyrhold over in Thaldraszus and wants the Order of the Silver Hand to know just what's going on with Tyr. In the most recent build, it looks like the Silver Hand has set up shop in one of the abandoned areas of Tyrhold, and it's not short term either. There's like a big space set up for them with banners and even target dummies. There's a lot to speculate here, and all of it is probably wrong, so let's just have fun with this, okay? The Silver Hand is showing up, alright, but is it the Silver Hand that was united against the Legion, or is it the Silver Hand that fought against the Horde during the Fourth War? And following the end of that war, the events of Shadowlands and the 3-year time skip, it's hard to say just what sorts of relationships are happening between the Paladin orders, but I'd like to think that, on the Dragon Isles, a kind of neutral place, there'd be a unified front if multiple Paladin orders were to show up. No doubt we're going to see some future questing come out of this, but what else? It's really curious to see a Raiders target dummy here. It could be a placeholder, it could be a hub from which we get into a future raid maybe. Most everyone anticipates 10.2's raid to take place west of the Anaran Plains, but maybe it starts here in the Tyrhold area and then, I don't know, the raid just moves over to the west. It could also be the opposite too, where it starts over in the west and then it moves east to Tyrhold for like some final conclusion. But for a 10.3 raid, where might that take place? Might it be a totally new area, or could Tyrhold be like a launching point, or could Tyrhold itself be repurposed into a raid instance? It's definitely a large enough area where some of the raid at least can happen. This hub could also be a sign of what's to come for Paladins as a class. I've long said that for a race class combo to happen, all we need really is a plausible enough story. In this case, Travald calls on the Silver Hand, they show up, and they make a deal with the Dragonflights to set up shop. And now let's fast forward a little bit. Things happen, Tyr's restored and becomes maybe active again, and the Silver Hand is reformed under a new order that moves away from the myth and the legend that is Tyr, and it goes to the Titan Keeper himself. And then Tyr opens the door, so to speak, for anyone who wants to wield the light in defense of Azeroth and Tyrhold, and ta-da, we have Mechanome Paladins. It's all made up, maybe not satisfying, but hey, it hits the bar, I think. This topic brings up some interesting conversation and debate that highlights how these next sets of race class combos, as in Paladins, Shaman, and Druids, it's harder to handwave than we may think. Since we're on Paladins, we'll talk about them and acknowledge that there are numerous faiths that are practiced on Azeroth that have a connection to the light. And there are fans out there who want or prefer each race to have its own identity expressed in-game. Like for example, a Night Elf Paladin, they would, instead of using the golden light, they would use white-colored light, moonlight. While Tauren Paladins, they would have abilities based on their sun god, Anche. Meanwhile, Orcs can have their new faith and they would have their own take on the Paladin. So kind of like how I would want to see different druid forms for each of the races, and they would have their own uniqueness to it. Paladins should have the same thing, right? Well, this appearance of the Silver Hand in Tyrhold, it confirms nothing, but it just introduces the idea that maybe things can go in a different direction. The Order of the Silver Hand is largely inspired by the presence or the legend or the myth of Tyr, but if Tyr is revived, what happens? I mentioned earlier that there's a scenario where Tyr could just reform the Order of the Silver Hand into something like more agnostic and welcoming to all races, especially those who don't have a clearly defined faith-based structure. So examples that come to mind, and I might be wrong here, I'm thinking maybe gnomes, goblins, Vulpera, and Pandaren. Maybe they can be part of this, not exactly faith-based paladin order of sorts. Meanwhile, other races can slide into closely related faiths, like the Worgen and Kultiran and Undead. They're all, human, and they can slide into a single structure. We also have High Mountain Tauren who can learn under the regular Tauren. But now I want to pass this question off to you. How do you think that they should handle Paladin race class combos for everyone, if at all? Data mining of this week's build has also revealed something interesting, information on the bundle pricing for WoW's next expansion. Now hopefully this puts to rest the theory that there would not be an expansion announcement during BlizzCon. I mean, I never had any doubts. Whew. It's data mining, so take it with a grain of salt, but we can expect the usual 3 versions, a regular, a heroic, and an epic version, which will include any number of goodies, but it'll also include a bonus 500, 750, or 1000 tender based on which one that you buy, or if you upgrade from one version to the next, you get the appropriate bonus amount, so it all works out. And the reaction from the internet so far, it's been mostly, yeah, okay. Unlike the $5 bundle that was in the store earlier this month, this is a once every 2 years kind of bonus for something that we're more than likely going to pick up anyway. I like that the denominations start at 500 because that matches the bonus that we got for picking up any version of Dragonflight before the trading post became a thing. So now there are opportunities to get more tender as opposed to the base edition giving nothing and that you'd only get the tender if you bought the more expensive editions. And also notice that this information is being included in the 10.17 patch, not the 10.2, which many of us predict will release before BlizzCon in early November. Is this a possible indication that a 10.2 might happen after BlizzCon? And maybe. Just because information is being thrown into this patch does not mean it's going to happen in this upcoming patch. And we see it all the time, including the more recent conversions to regular mounts so they can learn how to do dragon riding. But also the possible launch dates of 10.2 are still really up in the air. It could be mid-October or early November right after BlizzCon when the patch finally releases. It's a lot to look forward to in a fall and winter season that's going to be full of gaming. And I know this is super copium filled, but I'm glad that Dragonflight is both giving us lots of activities to do, but also making it totally okay to slack off or skip for a while. It helps to make World of Warcraft feel like a warm and comfy game to come home to, but I want to see what else is out there. I'm curious what games you're playing when you're not playing World of Warcraft, or if you're on break right now, what's taking up your time? For me next week, it's definitely going to be Starfield, and I'll be streaming it over on Twitch if you want to explore the universe with me. But anyway, that's the show, and I want to thank the lovely folks over on Twitch for continuing to show their support. To the incredible patrons, I am incredibly super grateful that you're sticking around. And hey, how about you, viewer? Thank you for making it to the end. You fed the algorithm and you're almost through. All you gotta do now is hit the like button, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.